The first moon warning bell cracked before Marenna Vale reached the Exile Road. It happened in front of the whole North Fang watchtower, beneath a sky the color of old iron, while every soldier, councilman, and victory-fed noble waited for the aging widow to admit she had frightened the kingdom for nothing. Captain Ysra Dain had one hand on the silver bell rope. Her other hand held Marenna's night watch ledger. "False alarm," Ysra said, her voice carrying cleanly over the frozen yard. "False alarm. False alarm." 11 times in one moon cycle, this woman rang the northern warning, without raid, without breach, without enemy blood on the snow. The soldiers shifted. Some looked angry. Some looked embarrassed for Marenna. That was worse. Marenna stood at the base of the watchtower steps in her old black cloak, its hem stiff with frost, its shoulders worn thin from years of winter wind. Her hair, once dark as wet bark, was now streaked with iron gray and pinned at the nape of her neck with a bone needle. She had not painted her face for judgment. She had not hidden the sleepless hollows beneath her eyes. Let them see what 30 years of watching cost. Alpha King Alaric Thornvale stood above her on the tower balcony. He wore black wolf armor beneath a white fur mantle, the victory chain of the Western campaign clasped at his throat. The kingdom had feasted 3 nights for his return. The northern bells, however, had not rested, because Marenna had not rested, because something beyond the frozen pines had been moving wrong. Alaric looked down at her with the cold patience of a king who had already heard enough. "Marenna Vale," he said. "You were warned after the 7th alarm." "I was warned after the 3rd, she answered. A murmur moved through the yard. Alaric's jaw tightened. Ysra smiled faintly. Marenna kept her eyes on the king. "By your captain." Ysra lifted the ledger. "Because your fear was draining the border. Every bell you rang pulled patrols from the feast roads. Every false call weakened discipline. You made children wake screaming, and wolves run armed into empty snow. Empty snow has tracks if anyone looks before sweeping them away." Ysra's smile vanished. Alaric noticed. "Not enough. Captain Dain sent 3 inspections," he said. "Each found no raiders. Because she sent them after dawn. The bells were rung before midnight. That is when the signs came." "And vanished?" Marenna looked at him for a long moment. Once, years ago, he had trusted her sleeplessness. He had lain half dead beneath this very tower after the Red Jaw battle, his wolf torn open by iron teeth, while Marenna sat beside him with a basin of snowmelt and kept whispering each change in his breathing to the healers. Too shallow, too fast. Now. She had not slept for 2 days then. He had lived. "You trusted my sleeplessness when it saved you," she said quietly. "You mocked it when it cost you pride." The yard went still. Alaric's eyes darkened. Ysra stepped forward at once. "Majesty, this is why she must be removed. She uses old service as shield against present harm." Marenna turned toward the captain. "And you use present rank to bury old law." "Old law? The moon warning bells do not belong to captains." The soldiers closest to the bell glanced upward. The great silver bell hung beneath the watchtower arch, nearly as tall as a man, carved with crescent wolves and old border script. It had rung through raids, avalanches, plague winds, and moonless attacks no scout survived long enough to report. No hand owned it. Not fully. The bells answered threat. And once, long ago, they had answered blood. A true warning could be ignored by men. It could not be unmade by rank. Ysra raised the rope higher. "Then let the bell answer now." Marenna felt something cold move beneath her ribs. "Do not touch it." A few soldiers laughed under their breath, a widow giving orders to a captain, an old watchwoman warning the hand that had already seized power. Ysra looked at Alaric. "May I prove it, Majesty?" Alaric's gaze stayed on Marenna. For a breath, she thought he might remember the nights she had stood above his borders before he had a throne worth guarding. Then he said, "Ring it." Ysra pulled the rope. The bell did not ring. It cracked. A silver line split from rim to crown. with a sound like bone breaking under ice. The yard fell silent so fast the wind seemed loud. Ysra released the rope. The crack glowed blue-white. Marenna closed her eyes. Not in triumph, in dread. A moon warning bell did not crack for insult. It cracked when a false hand tried to command a true warning. Alaric descended the tower steps slowly. His wolf shadow moved behind him, broad and black, but its ears were pinned back, as if the sound had hurt it somewhere deeper than hearing. Ysra recovered before anyone else. Her blood did this. Marenna opened her eyes. No, the captain pointed at her. She cursed the bell when she knew judgment was coming. Marenna almost laughed. After all these years, they still thought women like her had time to curse what they were too busy keeping alive. Alaric stopped before the cracked bell. He did not touch it. Marenna! Her name in his mouth was not soft, but it was not nothing. She looked at him. The last alarm, he said. What did you see? Ysra's face tightened. There. That was fear. Marenna answered before the captain could interrupt. No torches. No banners. Wolves moving without scent along the North Pine Line. Snow falling upward where the old ravine opens, and 3 red moons reflected in the ice where only one moon stood. A murmur broke through the soldiers. Old signs. Raid signs. Forbidden signs. Ysra snapped. Stories meant to frighten boys. Marenna looked at the cracked bell. Then why did you scrub the ravine stones before dawn? A smear of pale ravine salt still clung beneath Ysra's glove seam. Marenna saw it. So did the bell. The crack in the silver widened by a hair. Ysra moved fast. Too fast. Her hand struck Marenna across the face before the nearest guard could blink. The sound carried across the yard. Marenna staggered 1 step, tasted blood, then straightened. Alaric's wolf shadow snarled. Then he moved. 1 step. Enough for every soldier near Ysra to lower his hand from his weapon. No hand strikes her again, Alaric said. Ysra lowered her hand slowly, realizing her mistake, then covered it with anger. Majesty, she accused me before the watch, and you answered with your palm? Alaric said. Marenna wiped blood from her lip with 2 fingers. She answered too soon. The crack in the bell widened. From deep inside the silver, a low note began to hum. No rope moved. No hand touched bronze or moon metal. The sound crawled through the yard and into the bones of every wolf present. One by one, the patrol wolves lifted their heads toward the north. Then the second bell answered from the lower wall. Then the third from East Fang. Then another, farther away, and another. Across the kingdom, every moon warning bell began to ring without hands. Not loud, not frantic, calling. The bells did not speak Marenna's name. They spoke the law buried beneath it. The warning was true. Again, the watcher was exiled. Again, every bell in Thornvale lands turned its mouth toward the exile road and rang the old watch call no false hand could command. Alaric Thornvale reached for the cracked bell, and the silver split widened before his fingers touched it. He stopped, with his hand still in the air. The watchtower yard saw. So did Marenna. The moon warning bell did not fear the Alpha King. It warned him. There was a difference, and the old law made that difference cruelly clear. Captain Ysra Dain stepped between him and the bell before the silence could turn against her. Majesty, do not let it draw blood from you. Widow, blood is unstable in old warning metal. Marenna's cheek still burned where Ysra had struck her. She did not lift a hand to it. That is a convenient fear, she said. Ysra turned. You were warned not to practice blood rites near the bells. I was warned not to ring them when your patrols wanted sleep. You rang them 11 times. And 11 times, someone scrubbed the signs before dawn. The cracked bell hummed once. Low. Not proof enough. Not yet. Alaric's wolf shadow moved to the base of the tower stairs, ears pinned toward the north. The beast did not look at Ysra. It did not look at Marenna. It looked beyond the wall, toward the old ravine. Alaric noticed. His mouth tightened. Ysra noticed too, and spoke faster. "Your wolf is battle-tired, Majesty." The Western campaign left him sensitive to old bell tones. Marenna looked at Alaric. "Ask why her glove smells of ravine salt." Ysra's hand closed. Too late. The crack in the bell brightened, and pale grains of salt appeared beneath the seam of her left glove, glowing blue-white like frost under moonlight. Soldiers nearest her saw it first. One stepped back. Ysra's face hardened. "I walked the north route at dawn." "No," Marenna said. "You walked the old ravine before dawn. Before your own inspection." Alaric turned to Ysra. "Did you?" Ysra held his gaze. She was good at that. Better than any liar should be. "I walked every place a captain should walk, after a frightened widow emptied half the border watch into snow." Marenna smiled without warmth. "Except you reported no ravine sign." "Because there was none." "Then why salt?" Ysra did not answer quickly enough. The moon warning bell gave another low note. The sound passed through the yard and made every wolf lift its muzzle. Alaric looked from the bell to Marenna. "What is ravine salt?" Marenna felt the cost of the question, not because the answer was difficult, because he should have known. He was Alpha King of Thornvale lands. He had worn victory chains, commanded armies, judged borders, and yet the old things that kept the North alive had been left to widows, watchwomen, and soldiers too poor to sit at feast tables. Raiders from beyond North Fang use white salt to blind scent, she said. Not kitchen salt. Ravine salt. It clings under leather. It hides wolf smell for one night. If rubbed into stone and snow, the soldiers murmured. Ysra's jaw sharpened. Old superstition. Marenna looked at the wolves along the yard wall. "Then let them scent her glove." Ysra stepped back. Alaric saw that. His voice dropped. "Hold out your hand, Captain." For the first time, Ysra hesitated in front of him. Only one breath. Enough. Then she removed the glove herself and held it out, palm up, as if obedience could make suspicion vanish. A patrol wolf approached. It sniffed once, then recoiled so hard its claws scraped sparks from the stone. The yard broke into sound. Alaric lifted one hand. Silence returned in pieces. Ysra's eyes flashed. "Ravine salt can cling from any northern path. This proves nothing except that I went where Marenna sent panic." Marenna stepped toward the Exile Road. 2 guards moved to block her. Alaric did not raise his voice. "No one touches her." The guards stopped. Marenna looked at him. The words mattered. Not enough, but they mattered. Alaric walked down the last step until he stood level with her in the yard. Up close, victory looked less clean on him. There was sleepless gray beneath his eyes, a tightness at his throat where the chain rested, and something wounded in his wolf shadow that the courtly distance had hidden. "What do you require?" he asked. Ysra's face went still. Marenna heard the shift. "Not what do you claim. Not what do you fear. Require." She pointed toward the north wall. "The old ravine. Now, before the moon shifts and the salt dies under frost, I will send trackers." "No." The single word struck harder than she intended, but she did not soften it. "No," she repeated. "If you send Ysra's men, they will find what she allows them to find. If you send court wolves, they will step where she tells them not to step. If you want truth, you come yourself." Ysra snapped. "Majesty, this is manipulation." Marenna looked at him. "It is a warning." The cracked bell rang once without rope. The note bent north. Alaric stared at the bell, then at his wolf shadow. The beast had already turned toward the gate. He made his decision like a king. Too late, but still with weight. "Open the north gate." Ysra moved closer. "Majesty, the feast council waits. Durnmar envoys expect your victory oath before moonfall. There will be no victory oath while the moon warning bells ring." "Then let me ride ahead." "No." The word came from Alaric. Cold. Final. Ysra lowered her eyes, but Marenna saw the hatred there. Not fear now. Calculation. A small escort formed at the gate. 4 royal guards, 2 watchwomen who had stood silent until then, Alaric, Ysra, and Marenna still in her old cloak with blood drying at the corner of her mouth. No one returned her ledger. Marenna did not ask for it. A woman who had watched 30 winters knew that proof kept in enemy hands was already half buried. They passed beneath the cracked bell. As Marenna crossed its shadow, the silver stopped humming. Then the bell gave one clear note, not calling her name. Recognizing her step, Alaric heard it. So did Ysra. The north gate opened onto a road of hard snow and black pines. Wind pressed against them from the ravine, carrying no scent at all. That frightened the wolves more than blood would have hit. For half a mile, no one spoke. Then the first patrol wolf refused to go farther. It crouched low, trembling, muzzle pointed toward the trees. Alaric knelt beside it and touched its neck. "What do you sense?" The wolf whined. Marenna answered for it. "Nothing. That is the sign." Ysra laughed softly. "Now, absence is evidence?" Marenna did not look at her. "To those who survive, yes." They reached the old ravine as the moon slid between clouds. The snow there was untouched. Too untouched. Smooth as poured milk. Alaric stepped to the edge, and the wind died. For one breath, the world held still. Then snow began to rise from the ravine. Not fall. Rise. White flakes lifted upward from the dark cleft, slow and silent, climbing toward the moon as if the earth were breathing winter backward. The royal guards froze. Ysra went pale. Marenna looked at Alaric. "This," she said, "was my 12th alarm." From below the ravine, something without scent began to howl. The first torch dyed blue in the captain's hand. Not Ysra's hand. That made it worse. One of the royal guards had lifted it over the ravine edge, and the flame changed from gold to a thin, moon-cold blue before going out. Smoke curled upward without heat. The guard jerked back, swearing under his breath, and the patrol wolf beside him flattened its belly to the snow. Marenna did not step away. She lowered herself to one knee at the rim of the old ravine and pressed 2 fingers into the white crust. The snow felt wrong. Too smooth on top, too hollow beneath. She broke the surface carefully, and a line of pale salt flashed under moonlight. Alaric saw it. So did Ysra. Marenna lifted the crystals on her fingertips. "Ravine. Salt." Ysra's voice was sharp. "Or frost." Marenna rubbed the crystals between thumb and forefinger. They did not melt. They clung to her skin like powdered bone. Frost does not blind a wolf. One of the watchwomen behind her made a small sound. Not fear. Recognition. Alaric turned. "You have seen this before." The woman lowered her eyes. "My mother spoke of it. From the old raids." Ysra cut in. "Stories. Always stories. That is how panic survives among watchwomen." Marenna rose slowly. "Panic does not scrub stones." Ysra's gaze snapped to her. The ravine answered before the captain could. A scrape sounded below. Not claw on rock. Metal. Every wolf along the ridge shuddered. Alaric drew his sword. The blade caught moonlight, and his wolf shadow swelled behind him, broad and black, its eyes burning amber. For the first time since the watchtower yard, the soldiers looked relieved to see the Alpha King's power. Marenna did not. Power was useless when it struck where the enemy had already moved. "Do not send steel down first," she said. Alaric glanced at her. Ysra laughed. "Now the widow commands battle. The ravine is salted. Your wolves will smell nothing. Your men will chase sound and fall into blind turns." Marenna pointed to the left slope, where dark pines leaned over a buried ledge. "There is an old watch path above the cleft." Ysra's face went still. Alaric noticed again. This time, enough. "You know that path?" he asked Marenna. I walked it for 27 winters, and reported it to 3 kings. 2 listened. 1 forgot. The words struck him cleanly. He accepted the wound without answering it. Lead. Ysra stepped forward. Majesty, she could be drawing you into a prepared trap. Marenna looked at the captain's gloved hand. Then come behind me, and watch me die first. Silence followed. Alaric's wolf shadow turned its head toward her. Its ears eased forward, not softened, not tame, listening. Marenna moved before anyone could dress the moment in emotion. The old watch path was almost gone beneath drift snow and pine needles. She found it by memory, by the shape of buried stones under her boots, by the way winter wind bent differently where feet had once passed night after night. Behind her came Alaric, then 2 guards, then Ysra, then the watchwomen. The patrol wolves stayed high, whining low, unable to scent what waited below. Halfway along the ledge, Marenna stopped. Alaric halted instantly behind her. That mattered. She pushed aside a curtain of frozen roots and revealed 3 marks cut into the stone: a crescent wolf, a broken fang, and a hollow circle. Alaric's expression darkened. Raid marks. Old ones, Ysra said too quickly. Dead clans used them before your father's reign. Marenna brushed snow from the hollow circle. Fresh salt clung inside it. Dead clans do not refill marks before moonrise. A low growl rose from Alaric's chest, almost too deep to be human. Ysra's hand moved toward her sword. Marenna saw it. Alaric did too. No, he said. Only 1 word. Ysra's hand still. The ledge beneath them vibrated. Below, in the blue-dark ravine, something moved under the rising snow. Beneath the lifted snow, the black ice opened 3 red reflections. Not 1 moon. 3. Men would have called them shadows. Wolves would have called them absence. Marenna called them what they were: moonless raiders. One of the guards went pale. They were wiped out. No, she said. They learned to come without scent. Alaric stepped to the edge, sword ready. Marenna caught his wrist. Every soldier behind them stiffened. So did Alaric. Her fingers were cold against his skin. His pulse beat hard under her hand. Too alive, too familiar from nights when she had counted it beside a healer's basin. Not there, she said. His eyes lowered to her hand, then to her face. For 1 breath, the ravine, the soldiers, the captain, the kingdom, all fell away between them. You still remember where I almost died, he said quietly. Marenna released him as if the words had burned. I remember where everyone bled. His expression changed. Not hurt. Understanding made sharp by shame. She pointed to a stone shelf 10 paces down the hidden path. If you stand there, your shadow will fall wrong. They will think the ridge is empty. Ysra's mouth tightened. How would she know raider sightlines unless she walked with them? There it was. The second accusation. Marenna did not turn. Because I watched them kill my husband. The path went silent. Even the rising snow seemed to slow. Alaric's face lost color. Marenna kept her eyes on the ravine. 30 years ago, the Moonless came through this cleft. My mate rang the first bell until his hand split. I rang the second when he fell. The third answered my blood. The cracked bell from North Fang rang in the distance. 1 note, clear and aching. Ysra whispered, lies. Marenna looked back at her. Then why did you erase his death mark from the watch ledger? Ysra's mask did not crack this time. It vanished. Below the ledge, the moonless howl rose again, and from the ravine wall beneath Marenna's feet, hidden under salt and ice, her dead husband's old bell mark began to glow under the salt Ysra had tried to bury. The moonless raiders climbed without scent, and only Marenna Vale knew which stones would betray a living foot. They came up the ravine like winter, learning to crawl. No wolf could smell them. No torch could hold steady above them. The rising snow hid their shoulders, their blades, the pale wraps around their faces. Only the black ice below kept opening those 3 red reflections, one after another, like false moons watching from beneath the world. A royal guard took 1 step toward the edge. Marenna caught his sleeve. "Not there." He looked at her hand as if an old widow had no right to stop him from dying. Then the stone where his boot had nearly landed collapsed into the ravine. No sound came up after it fell. The guard went white. Alaric Thornvale saw everything. So did Captain Ysra Dain. The old bell mark beneath Marenna's feet glowed brighter under the ravine salt. A crescent ring of blue-white light spread across the stone, cutting through the powder Ysra had used to bury it. The mark did not take the shape of a ghost. It did not call a dead man's face from the snow. It rang without sound. That was worse. Ysra pointed at it. Grief. Working. Marenna did not look away from the climbing shadows. "No. You buried your husband in that mark, and now you use him to command the king's fear." Marenna turned then. Slowly. The wind pressed her gray-streaked hair against her cheek. Blood from Ysra's slap had dried near her mouth. She looked tired enough to fall, and steadier than every armored soldier on the ridge. "My husband is dead," she said. "Do not make him useful to your lie." The words struck even Alaric into silence. Ysra's eyes hardened. "Then what is it?" A last true alarm. The bell mark brightened once. Marenna knelt beside it, ignoring the scrape of stone against her old knees. She brushed ravine salt from the carving with the edge of her cloak. Beneath the crescent ring were 3 shallow cuts, almost erased by salt and ice. A wolf claw, a bell notch, a watchwoman's line. Marenna touched each in order. "This is not a grave mark," she said. "It records the last warning before North Fang fell silent 30 years ago. A watchman cut the first mark when he saw movement without scent. He cut the second when the bell was rung and no patrol came. The third belongs to the watcher who survived long enough to carry the alarm upward." Alaric's voice came low. "You." She did not answer. The mark answered for her. Blue light ran up her fingers and stopped at the old scar hidden under her sleeve, the place where moon metal had burned into her skin the night her blood answered the 3rd bell. Alaric saw it. His wolf shadow lowered its head, unsettled and fierce. Ysra moved before grief could become belief. Convenient. A dead husband, a hidden scar, and a mark only she can read. Marenna rose. The watch ledger can read it too. For the first time, Ysra's hand closed hard around the book at her side. Alaric turned to her. "Give me the ledger." Ysra held it out just enough to appear obedient, then stopped. "Majesty, the ledger is evidence in a border trial. If old warning metal has touched her blood, the pages may answer falsely." Marenna almost smiled. "Pages do not fear me." The ledger did. Before Ysra could pull it back, frost spread across the black leather cover. Not ordinary frost, silver-white shaped like bell cracks. It climbed over Ysra's glove, up her fingers, locking her hand around the book she had refused to surrender. Ysra sucked in a breath. Alaric stepped toward her. She tried to open her hand. Could not. The distant moon warning bell rang once from North Fang watchtower. The ledger answered, with a small cracking sound. A line opened across the cover, not breaking it, revealing a page beneath. The writing inside glowed through leather and frost. Marenna saw only fragments. Last alarm, North Ravine, Watchman Vale. Then Ysra twisted her wrist, hiding the page against her cloak. Alaric's eyes flashed. "Captain," Ysra's voice sharpened. "Raiders are climbing, Majesty. Will you stare at a book while they take the ridge?" That was clever. Horribly clever, because she was right. Below them, the Moonless had reached the first stone shelf. Their blades remained dull under moonlight. Their faces did not show. One lifted a hooked spear and placed it silently into a crack. Marenna knew too well. "Left shelf," she said. 3 steps below the pine root. The soldiers hesitated. Marenna's voice cut through them. Now. Alaric moved first. Not down. Across. He took the stone shelf she had warned him toward earlier, letting his shadow fall wrong across the ravine wall. The Moonless below paused, reading the shadow badly, turning their hidden faces toward an empty ridge. "Archers to the dead root," Marenna ordered. "Do not aim at the bodies. Aim at the hooks." A young guard stared at her. Alaric did not. "Do as she says." The first arrow struck a hook spear. Metal snapped. A Moonless raider fell backward without a cry. The others kept climbing. New scent. No sound. No fear. Marenna moved along the ledge faster than age should have allowed, striking the snow with her staff before each step. Twice, hollow stones cracked under the staff instead of a soldier's boot. Twice, men lived because she remembered where winter lied. Ysra watched her command the path, and hatred burned through the captain's control. "She knows too much of them," Ysra said. "No widow learns enemy ladders by morning." Marenna pointed to a notch in the ravine wall. "That ladder route killed 4 watchwomen in my 23rd winter. We sealed it with stones. Someone cleared it this morning." The old bell mark flashed. Ysra's frozen ledger cracked wider in her grip. This time, everyone saw the page beneath. A line of fresh ink had been scraped, almost clean. Alaric reached for it. Ysra jerked back, but the frost held her hand in place. The page turned by itself, slowly, painfully, as if the ledger had waited years for a truthful reader. Words rose in blue-white light. Last true alarm. North Ravine breach. Below that, the ink blackened, then rewrote itself through the scraped place. The last true alarm was erased by the captain's hand. An arrow struck the cliff below Alaric's boot and made no sound. It should have sparked against stone. It should have snapped. Instead, the shaft vanished halfway into the ravine wall, as if the dark had opened a mouth and swallowed it. A heartbeat later, a hooked spear rose from that same patch of shadow, searching for the ledge where the Alpha King stood. Marenna saw the hook before the guards did. Down. Alaric obeyed. The spear swept over his shoulder and caught only the edge of his white fur mantle. Cloth tore. The royal guards shouted. One lunged toward the ravine with his sword raised. Marenna struck the back of his knee with her staff. He dropped hard into the snow. The hook passed where his throat had been. He stared up at her, furious and alive. "Thank me later," she said. Below the ledge, the Moonless raiders climbed without sound, their faces wrapped in pale cloth, their bodies bending strangely beneath the rising snow. They did not rush. That was what made them terrifying. They moved like they had all the time in the world, and no fear of being heard. Ysra Dain used the panic well. "Shield line to the ravine edge," she shouted. "Drive them down before they breach." 3 soldiers moved at once. Marenna's stomach went cold. "No." Ysra turned on her. "You are not captain here." "No," Marenna said. "But I remember where the edge lies." The first soldier reached the place Ysra had pointed to. The snow beneath him opened. Alaric caught him by the cloak before he fell. The man dangled over the black cleft, boots kicking at empty air, while a Moonless hook scraped upward for his heel. Alaric hauled him back with one arm. Then he looked at Ysra, not fully accusing, not yet, but no longer blind. Ysra's face remained controlled. The ledge shifted. Marenna stepped between her and the soldiers. The ledge has been broken since the 3rd winter after the Red Jaw battle. Every watchwoman knows not to stand there. Every watchwoman, Ysra said. Except the ones you frightened into believing your stories. The frozen ledger cracked again in her hand. Blue-white light leaked through the cover. Ysra pressed the book against her side, trying to hide it from Alaric. Marenna. So did one of the younger watchwomen. "Majesty," the girl whispered. "The page is still writing." Ysra's head snapped toward her. Alaric's voice cut before the captain could speak. "Do not threaten her." The girl swallowed and stood straighter. Marenna felt something tighten in her chest. Not hope. Hope was too expensive. but perhaps a small place where hope might one day be put. Below, a moonless raider reached the first shelf and placed both hands on the ridgestone. No scent touched the wolves. No growl warned the soldiers. Only Marenna saw the snow bend around the raider's weight. "Left flank," she ordered. "Aim where the snow rises wrong." Alaric did not question her this time. "Left flank." "On here, mark." Ysra's jaw hardened. Marenna lifted one hand. Waited. The rising snow swelled around 3 invisible shoulders. Now. Arrows flew. 2 struck cloth. 1 struck the hook strap that held a raider to the wall. The body dropped backward into the ravine, still without a cry. The wolves whined. They hated an enemy that gave them nothing to hate. Marenna moved the next stone. Then the next, tapping with her staff. Hollow, safe, hollow, broken. She marked the living path with the end of her cloak, tearing strips from the hem and tying them to dead roots. Alaric followed the marks. So did his guards. Ysra did not. She stood where she could see the ledger and the ravine both, caught between old crime and present survival. The frozen page turned by itself. This time the words shone through the black leather clearly enough for all near her to read. Watchman Vale rang first bell, second bell unanswered, third bell, bloodbound. Marenna stopped moving. For one breath, the ravine vanished. She saw her husband's hands on the bell rope, blood slicking his fingers, his voice telling her not to come down, her own hand closing over the second rope after he fell, the third bell answering when no hand remained, and her blood touched moonmetal. Ysra heard the stillness and struck at it. "There," she said. "Bloodbound. She admits it. Her line is tied to the bells. She has always been able to bend warning law." Marenna looked at her. "You think a binding is ownership because command is all you understand." Ysra's eyes flashed. Marenna turned to the soldiers. "Bloodbound means the bell remembers the watcher who paid for an alarm no one answered. It does not make lies true. It makes silence expensive. The old bell mark under the salt pulsed once. Not enough to save them. Enough to remind them. A moonless raider came over the ledge behind Ysra. No wolf warned her. Marenna did. "Captain, down." Ysra did not obey. Perhaps pride held her upright. Perhaps calculation. Perhaps she wanted the old widow to look wrong in front of the king one last time. The raider's blade slid from the snow behind her, curved and black. Alaric moved. Faust. His wolf shadow struck before his sword did, slamming into the raider's chest with a sound like thunder trapped in fur. The moonless body hit the stone, and finally made noise a wet crack that turned every wolf's head at once. Alaric stood between Ysra and death. Then he turned from the raider to Marenna. "You warned her." Marenna's mouth tightened. "I am a watchwoman." Ysra breathed hard, alive because of the woman she had tried to exile. That should have humbled her. It did not. She used it. She knew the raider was there before any wolf did. Ysra said, "Ask yourself why." The soldiers faltered. Alaric's eyes narrowed, but not at Marenna. At the wound, Ysra knew how to press. Marenna lifted her staff and pointed toward the lower shelf. "Ask after you survive. They are not climbing to kill you here." Alaric followed her line of sight. The Moonless were splitting. Half climbed toward the ridge, drawing swords and arrows. The other half moved under the ledge toward a hidden ice cut beneath the watchtower road. Ysra's face went blank. Too blank. Marenna felt the truth land before she could name it. "They know the lower road." Alaric turned to Ysra. "How?" The frozen ledger answered. The book tore open in the captain's locked hand, pages whipping in the wind, though no wind touched them. One page stopped, glowing with a fresh command written over scraped old ink. "Lower road left unwatched by captain's order." Marenna's blood went cold. Ysra had not merely hidden raid signs. She had made a path. Below them, the moonless raiders reached the ice cut and began moving toward North Fang Watchtower. The cracked bell rang from the tower behind them. One desperate note. Then the ledger burned blue, and wrote the next line. The captain opened the silent road. The strip of cloak Marenna had tied to the dead root snapped in half. No wind touched it. That was how she knew the Moonless had reached the undercut beneath the watchtower road. "Back," she said. One guard looked at Alaric instead of her. Marenna drove the end of her staff into the snow before his boot. The crust split open, revealing empty black beneath. "Back now, or your king carries you home in pieces." The guard stumbled away. Alaric did not correct her. That mattered. But there was no time to feel it. Below the ridge, the Moonless moved through the hidden ice cut Ysra had left unguarded. They did not howl now. They did not scrape their blades. Their silence was trained, old and patient. In another 5 minutes, they would reach the watchtower road. In 10, they would be under North Fang's lower wall. In 15, the victory feast would become a slaughter before the first noble understood why the bells had rung. Marenna turned to the 2 watchwomen. "There are 3 bell posts between here and the tower. Which one still has its rope?" The younger woman answered first. "Middle post. The others were cut last thaw." Marenna looked at Ysra. The captain's mouth remained hard. "Old ropes rot, not when they are cut clean." Alaric stepped closer to Ysra. "You said the lower road was watched." "It was," Ysra said. "Until she dragged us into the ravine." Marenna shook her head. "No, you wanted us here." The cracked ledger in Ysra's frozen hand shivered. Blue light crawled across the open page. Ysra twisted her wrist, but the frost held her fingers locked around the truth. Marenna read the next line before the captain could hide it. "Royal Feast Road cleared for Durnmar envoy." Alaric's expression darkened. Durnmar. The name struck the guards with more fear than the Moonless had. Durnmar was not a raid clan. It was a military house across the northern trade line, rich in iron, hungry for border command, and old enough to know every weakness in Thornvale law. Ysra lifted her chin. "Durnmar offered shield, right for the north. Your council knew the negotiation. Not this." "No," she said. "Not the necessary parts." Marenna felt the old pattern settle coldly into place. A frightened border. A silenced warning. A feast full of nobles. A lower road left open, just long enough for a raid to prove North Fang needed stronger command. Then Ysra would offer it. Or sell it. Alaric understood almost as quickly. "You meant to let them breach." Ysra's eyes flashed. "I meant to let fear become useful." The watchwomen drew breath sharply. Marenna did not. She had known commanders like Ysra before. They did not see bodies. They saw proof waiting to bleed. The Moonless reached the lower road. The distant bell post gave no sound. Its rope hung cut. Marenna closed her eyes for one heartbeat and saw the old map behind her lids. Post, slope, stone run, fallen pine, watch stair, bell arch. 30 years of night patrol laid itself beneath her feet, clearer than any war council chart. She opened her eyes. "We cannot outrun them on the road," Alaric said. "Then we fight here." "No, here they want your shadow. There they want the feast. We cut between." Ysra laughed once. "With 2 watchwomen and old paths?" Marenna looked at her. "With the paths. You forgot old women still remember." She moved. Not toward the main road. Toward a wall of frozen thornbush so dense one guard cursed under his breath. Marenna struck the 3rd root from the left. The bush loosened like a door made by winter, revealing a narrow stone stair buried beneath snow. Alaric stared. "The widow stair," said the older watchwoman softly. Marenna nodded. "Built for alarm runners when men with swords were too slow." Ysra's face went pale with fury. "That route was sealed." "By whom?" The ledger cracked again. Ysra did not answer. Alaric pointed to the guards. "Follow Marenna. No one steps where she has not stepped." Then he looked at Ysra. "You stay between my sword and my wolf." For the first time, the captain looked afraid. "Good." They descended the widow stair fast, single file, stone slick beneath their boots. Marenna went first, staff tapping, breath steady only because she refused to let it break. Age pulled at her knees. Cold betrayal. Blood from her split lip had dried tight against her skin. Still, she moved faster than the armed men behind her. At the stairs turn, a Moonless scout rose from the snow without scent. A guard lifted his sword. "Lo!" Marenna snapped. The guard dropped. The scout's blade passed overhead. Alaric's wolf shadow struck from behind, tearing the scout from the stair and casting him into the ravine dark. This time, the shadow trembled after the blow. Its edges tore like smoke. Marenna saw. So did Alaric. His hand tightened around his sword. "You are weakening," she said. Ysra's voice came from behind them. "The bells are doing it." Marenna looked at the king's wolf shadow. It was not weakened by the bells. It was weakened by the silence between warnings, by every alarm ignored, by every border truth made small so the throne could remain comfortable. But she did not say that yet. The middle bell post appeared ahead, half buried beside the watch road. Its rope still hung, stiff with frost. Moonless raiders were already below it, moving toward the lower wall in pale lines. Too many. Marenna reached for the rope. Ysra lunged. Alaric caught her before she reached Marenna, his hand closing around the captain's arm. "No," he said. Ysra's face twisted. "If she rings that, every feast hall in Thornvale will panic." Marenna wrapped both hands around the rope. "Good." She pulled. The bell post did not ring. The rope cut into her palms. But the bell above stayed silent. Ysra smiled. Then Marenna looked at the frozen ledger still locked in the captain's hand. "You cut the bell mouth, too." The ledger burst open. Blue fire lit the page. Middle warning post, silenced by captain's order. Below the road, the Moonless raiders stopped. Not because they heard a bell, because all at once, every severed bell rope along the lower road lifted into the air, as if held by invisible hands. Marenna's blood warmed beneath her old scar. The moon warning bell at North Fang rang once across the distance. The silent post answered without a mouth, and the old law wrote itself in blue light across the frost-covered road. When men cut the rope, the watcher's blood becomes the bell. Marenna's palms opened before the rope moved. The frost-stiff cord cut deep into skin already cracked by winter, and blood slipped over her fingers in thin dark lines. It did not fall straight to the snow. It ran along the rope, upward, as if the severed warning post had been waiting for a living hand to remember what iron and rank had broken. The silent bell mouth above her gave no sound, but the road beneath her feet began to tremble. Ysra Dain saw the blood climb. Her face changed from fury to fear. "Stop her," she said. No one moved. Not because they understood, because Alaric Thornvale had turned his sword sideways across the narrow road, between Marenna and every hand that might reach her. Ysra's eyes flashed. "Majesty, she is binding the warning road to herself. If you let her finish, every bell in the north may answer widow. Blood instead of crown command." Marenna kept both hands on the rope. Her breath scraped in her chest. The bells have never answered crown command. They answer the kingdom. They answer danger. Below the road, the Moonless raiders began to climb faster. Their silence changed. Not sound. Urgency. The severed ropes along the lower path lifted higher, each one shining with a faint blue line where Marenna's blood called through the old watch law. The middle post shook. Its bell mouth had been cut from the inside, but the metal remembered shape. Moonlight gathered around the empty arch and hardened into a thin silver rim. A bell made of absence. One of the watchwomen gasped. Marenna pulled. This time the silent post rang. No metal struck metal. The note came from her blood, from the cut rope, from every buried mark along the widow stair. It ran down the lower road and struck the Moonless raiders like sudden fire. For the first time, they made sound, not screams. Isis. Their pale face wraps snapped backward in the warning note, and the ravine salt on their boots flared blue. Where the salt burned, their hidden bodies became visible. Gray armor, hooked spears, curved black blades, old clan brands cut into their throats. Alaric's guards loosed arrows at once. Marenna lifted one bloody hand. "Not the throats. They're hooks." The guards adjusted. Alaric did not question her. "Hooks," he ordered. Arrows flew lower. Metal snapped. 3 raiders fell from the ice cut. 2 more clung to the wall, trying to climb without their silent anchors. Ysra lunged against Alaric's grip. "You are letting her command royal soldiers." Alaric looked at the road where invisible enemies had become visible under Marenna's warning. Yes, the word struck harder than praise. Marenna did not turn toward him. If she looked at him now, the old foolish part of her heart might mistake obedience in battle for honor and peace. She pulled again. The silent post rang a second time. Farther down the road, the next cut rope rose, answered, and burned blue. Then another. Then another. The lower path, left unguarded by Ysra's order, lit itself piece by piece like a spine, remembering it had once stood straight. The Moonless faltered. Then their leader stepped from the rising snow. He was taller than the others, wrapped in white and iron, with 3 red moon marks painted across his brow. He lifted no blade. He lifted a strip of black leather. Marenna's stomach went cold. An order strip, Thornvale leather. Alaric saw it too. "Hold fire." The leader tilted his head toward the ridge. Then he dropped the strip onto the snow. It did not burn under the warning note. It opened. Blue light from the severed bells ran across it, reading what ink had tried to keep private. Lower road to remain blind until feast oath. Durnmar shield right. To be invoked after breach. Authorized by Captain Ysra Dain. The soldiers turned. Ysra's expression hardened into something beyond denial. Calculation had failed. Now, only survival remained. "You do not understand rule," she said to Alaric. "Fear must be shaped before it destroys a kingdom. Durnmar would have brought iron, riders, discipline. Your border is run by widows, old signs, and men too loyal to dead customs." Marenna's blood slid down the rope. Her hands were beginning to shake. Ysra saw that and smiled. "Look at her. She can barely stand. This is what you would place above command?" Marenna pulled the rope a third time. The note came weaker. Alaric heard it. So did the Moonless leader. He charged, not toward the guards, toward Marenna. Alaric's wolf shadow struck across the road, huge and black, slamming into the raider's path. The Moonless leader drove a salt-coated blade through the shadow's shoulder. Alaric staggered, as if the wound entered his own body. The wolf shadow tore, edges smoking blue. Marenna released the rope. Alaric. His name left her mouth before she could stop it. He dropped to one knee but kept his sword raised. "Ring it. You will fall. Then ring it before I do." There it was again. The man she remembered under blood and snow, not the king who ignored her. The wolf who still put his body between a warning and the dark. Marenna wrapped the rope around her bleeding hands. Ysra moved behind her. The older watchwoman shouted. But Ysra was already close, dagger drawn, face white with rage. "If the North must choose between an old widow and an army," Ysra hissed, "I choose the army." Marenna did not turn. Alaric tried to rise, could not. The younger watchwoman stepped into Ysra's path. So did the older one. Then the guard Marenna had knocked down earlier. Then another. Then 3 more. No one touched the captain yet, but every body between Ysra and Marenna was an answer. Marenna pulled the rope with all the strength 30 winters had not taken from her. The warning road rang whole. Every cut post answered. Every ravine salt mark burned. Every moonless raider became visible beneath the moon. And across the ice, the old bell mark of Watchman Vale flared one final time, throwing blue light onto the open ledger page still frozen in Ysra's hand. A new line appeared beneath the captain's order. The watcher who bled was not false. Then, from North Fang watchtower behind them, the cracked great bell gave a war toll so deep the stones under the road shook. Marenna turned toward the sound. Too late. The feast banners on the tower wall were burning blue. The Moonless had already reached the victory hall. A silver goblet rolled across the victory hall and froze before the wine could spill. The noblewoman who had dropped it stared at the cup as blue fire climbed the stem. Around her, the feast tables still groaned under roasted meat, black bread, winter pears, and untouched bowls of cream. Musicians had stopped playing. Wolves beneath the tables had risen with their hackles high, but none of them growled in the right direction. They could not smell the enemy. That was how the first Moonless raider reached the western hearth. He stepped from the shadow behind a victory banner, with a curved black blade in his hand, face wrapped in pale cloth, 3 red moons painted across his brow. The hall screamed too late. Marenna reached the upper gallery as the scream broke open. Her hands were still bleeding from the cut rope. Her knees ached from the widow's stare. Snow clung to the hem of her cloak. Behind her came Alaric, wounded but upright, his wolf shadow torn at one shoulder and smoking blue where the salt blade had struck it. Captain Ysra Dain came last, ledger still frozen to her hand. The feast guests saw Marenna first. Of course they did. Old Vito, bloodied hands, cracked watchwoman cloak, raiders at the hearth. Fear chose the easiest shape. "She brought them!" someone cried. Ysra did not waste the gift. "Seal the gallery. Keep her from the bells." Marenna did not look at her. She was counting exits. Main doors blocked by panic. East servant arch still clear. North tapestry moving wrong. 2 raiders behind the musicians. 1 under the royal table. A child beneath the lower bench, silent with terror, while a moonless hook slid toward the wood. Marenna pointed. "Bench." Alaric moved before she finished. His sword cut through the hook and pinned the raider's wrist to the floor. The child scrambled out, sobbing, into the arms of a kitchen woman. Marenna turned to the 2 watchwomen. "East arch. Take the servants and children first. No one uses the main doors." They salted the threshold. A court lord shouted. "Who gave you command here?" Alaric's voice answered from below. "I did." The hall went still for one impossible breath. Then chaos swallowed it again. Marenna descended the gallery stairs, staff striking each step. A Moonless raider climbed the banister without sound, blade low. One of Alaric's guards lifted a spear. "Not the chest," Marenna snapped. "Right knee." The guard obeyed. The spear struck the knee strap, and the raider fell hard enough to make the floor shake. Sound returned to him when the strap broke. He screamed. Every wolf in the hall turned toward that scream and attacked. The guests saw it then. Not magic. Method. Marenna knew where silence was fastened. Ysra saw them seeing. "Convenient," she said coldly. "She knows how to unmake their silence because she knows how it was made." Marenna struck her staff against the floor. "Their straps hold ravine salt. Cut the straps, and your wolves can find them." Alaric raised his sword. "Knees, wrists, throat ties. Break the salt straps." His soldiers followed her knowledge through his command. Moonless raiders who had been shadows became bodies. Bodies could bleed. The feast hall became a battlefield. Blue fire ran up the victory banners. Meat smoked on overturned tables. Nobles crawled beneath benches, while servants dragged them by their collars toward the east arch. The 2 watchwomen moved faster than any court guard, cutting children free from under fallen chairs, marking safe stones with strips of torn linen. Marenna reached the center of the hall and saw the Durnmar envoy standing beside the royal dais. He had not fled. His gray cloak remained spotless. 2 iron-ringed guards flanked him, calm while others panicked. That calm told her enough. Alaric saw him a heartbeat later. "Lord Envoy." The Durnmar man bowed slightly. "Majesty, your northern hall has been breached during Victory Feast. Durnmar grieves with Thornvale." Marenna heard the words beneath the words. Not grief. Opportunity. Ysra lifted her frozen ledger hand. Majesty, accept shield. Right. Durnmar soldiers are camped beyond the lower ford. They can secure North Fang before dawn. Alaric looked at her. Camped? He said. Ysra's mouth tightened. In readiness. Marenna stepped over a fallen salt strap. No army camps in readiness for a breach, unless someone told them where silence would open. The ledger cracked in Ysra's hand. Blue light showed beneath the leather. The Durnmar envoy's eyes flicked toward it. Small. Enough. A moonless raider burst from behind the north tapestry toward Marenna's back. Alaric shouted her name. She did not turn. She drove her staff backward into the floor joint, where old watchwomen once fixed alarm chains. The staff hit metal hidden under stone. A buried chime rang upward, sharp as broken ice. The raider's salt straps flared blue. A kitchen boy threw a carving knife. It cut the raider's wrist tie. The wolves took him down. Marenna looked at the boy. Good hand. His frightened face changed, just a little. Remembered. Ysra's voice rose above the battle. You see? She has hidden chimes under the king's own hall. Marenna turned. Your captains sealed them after calling them widow clutter. Alaric's jaw hardened. Who ordered the hall chimes sealed? The frozen ledger opened wider. Ysra tried to throw it away. She could not. The page turned on its own, blue fire reading through scraped ink. Hall warning chains removed for feast security. Durnmar shield right to be presented after first breach. The nobles nearest the dais recoiled from the envoy. The Durnmar man raised both hands. Thornvale's internal records are not mine. Marenna stared at his spotless cloak. Then why do your guards wear saltless boots in a salted hall? Alaric looked down. So did everyone. The Durnmar guards' boots were clean. Every Thornvale soldier's boots carried pale salt from the breached thresholds. Only those who knew the salted path had avoided it. Alaric's wolf shadow rose behind him despite its wound. Ysra's face went white. The envoy's politeness finally thinned. Outside, the cracked great bell began to ring again, but this time, it did not call the road. It called the hall. Every buried warning chain under the victory floor answered beneath Marenna's staff, one after another, outlining old watch lines in blue fire from servant arch to royal dais. The ledger burned so bright, Ysra cried out. A final line wrote itself across the open page. The feast breach was prepared for Durnmar shield right. Then the Moonless raiders stopped fighting. All of them, as if some silent order had changed. They turned their rapt faces toward the royal dais, toward Alaric's wounded wolf shadow, and began to kneel. Not to him, to the Durnmar envoy. The Durnmar envoy's clean boot crossed a blue watch line and did not burn. That told Marenna Vale more than his kneeling raiders had. The old warning chains under the Victory Hall recognized Thornvale blood, Thornvale betrayal, and Thornvale silence. They flared beneath salted boots, beneath hidden hooks, beneath lies scraped into ledgers. But the envoy crossed them untouched because he had not broken Thornvale law. He had been invited through it. Lord Envoy Cardenvoss adjusted one silver cuff as Moonless raiders knelt around the royal dais, their pale-wrapped faces lowered, their curved blades held flat across their palms. The hall's panic thinned into a worse kind of fear. A battlefield still had movement. This was theater. Ysra Dain understood that. She straightened, despite the frozen ledger chained to her hand by blue frost. Alaric Thornvale stood below the dais with his sword raised and his wolf shadow torn at the shoulder. Blood had begun to darken his sleeve where the shadow's wound echoed through flesh. Still, he did not look weak, only cornered. Cardenvoss bowed. Majesty, Durnmar regrets the disorder inside your hall. Marenna's bleeding hands tightened around her staff. Disorder. That was what men called a prepared slaughter when they wished to sell the cure. Alaric's voice was low. Your soldiers kneel with my attackers. They are not my soldiers. The Moonless leader lifted his head slightly. Carden smiled without warmth. They are proof that North Fang cannot be held by old bell customs and sleepless widows. A growl moved through the Thornvale wolves, but it had no scent to follow. The Moonless remained bowed, almost peaceful, as if the kneeling itself were another weapon. Ysra raised the frozen ledger. Majesty, invoke shield, right. Durnmar iron can seal the lower road before dawn. Refuse, and every house in this hall will know you chose a disgraced watchwoman's superstition over living protection. Marenna looked at Alaric. There it was. Not only murder, a choice staged under fear. If Alaric refused, he looked reckless. If he accepted, Durnmar gained border command. Ysra would become the captain who saved Thornvale by inviting Iron into a panic she had helped create. Alaric turned toward her. What does shield? Right cost, Ysra answered before the envoy could. Temporary command alignment. Durnmar officers attached to North Fang. Joint authority over warning posts until the breach season ends. The ledger cracked. Marenna read the blue glow beneath the lie. And marriage seal? The hall stilled. Ysra's eyes cut to her. Marenna stepped closer to the dais. Say it whole. Carden's smile faded. Alaric looked from Marenna to Ysra. Marriage seal? The frozen ledger opened in Ysra's hand, the pages resisting her grip like a living thing. Ink rose under blue fire. Durnmar shield right, to be secured through command marriage. Captain Ysra Dain to hold North Fang war right under Durnmar seal. Unnoble gasped. Ysra did not deny it. She lifted her chin as if ambition were cleaner than treachery. North Fang needs a commander who can make hard choices. Marenna's voice stayed quiet. You mean dead choices? Ysra turned on her. I mean choices beyond your grief. You rang bells. I kept armies thinking. You opened a silent road. To prove the road needed iron. The confession did not come like collapse. It came like pride. That made it uglier. Alaric's wolf shadow surged toward her, but the wound in its shoulder split wider, and Alaric staggered. The Moonless leader rose half an inch, watching weakness gather. Marenna saw it. Do not spend your wolf on her, she said. Alaric breathed hard. She betrayed the North, and he is waiting for you to bleed enough to accept his terms. Carden's eyes moved to her fully now, not dismissing, measuring. Widow Vale, he said. You have saved several lives tonight. No one denies your local usefulness. But bells cannot garrison a border. Marenna looked at the kneeling Moonless. No, but they can tell us who opened it. Carden's jaw tightened. A Moonless raider near the hearth shifted. Marenna struck her staff once against the blue watch line. The hidden hall chime answered. Not loudly, sharply. The raider froze. The watch line beneath him flared upward, showing a black cord tied around his wrist. On it hung a small iron seal stamped with Durnmar's crossed tower mark. The hall saw. Carden's politeness thinned to bone. That is battlefield salvage. Marenna lifted her staff toward the next kneeling raider. Then let them all show what they salvaged. Carden moved one hand. The Moonless rose. All at once. Blades lifted. Screams tore through the hall again. Alaric stepped in front of Marenna. She caught his elbow before he could charge. Not forward, she said. Make them cross the lines. He understood faster now. Hold the blue paths, he shouted. Drive them across the watch lines. Do not chase shadows. The soldiers obeyed. So did the servants. So did the watchwomen. The hall changed. Not into order. Into memory. Old watch lines, long buried beneath feast stone and royal rugs, burned blue from arch to arch. Servants dragged benches to block unmarked ground. Guards drove Moonless raiders across glowing lines, where their salt straps flared and their bodies became visible. Wolves attacked only when the straps burned, no longer wasting teeth on absence. Marenna moved through the center, bleeding staff in hand, pointing once, twice, never more than needed. Left chain, low strap. Do not step there. Hold the children behind the bread table. Every command saved breath. Ysra watched the hall obey her enemy. Hatred broke the last piece of restraint in her face. She drew her dagger and cut into the frozen ledger at her own wrist. Blue fire burst from the page. Alaric shouted, "Ysra!" Too late. The ledger tore free, half its pages burning, half still frozen. Ysra flung the flaming book toward the hearth, where 2 moonless raiders had spilled lamp oil. If the ledger burned, the proof of command, marriage, and silent road orders would die in the same fire that swallowed half the feast hall. Marenna Vale. Her knees nearly failed. Alaric moved after her, but 3 raiders crossed his path. Marenna reached the ledger as the first page blackened. She did not grab the book. She drove her bleeding palm into the blue watchline beneath it. Pain shot up her arms so hard, the hall went white. The hidden warning chain under the floor rang through her blood. The fire froze. The ledger froze with it. Every bell in North Fang answered, one after another, until the victory hall shook from roof beam to stone root. Marenna's blood spread across the floor in a thin crescent. The great cracked bell spoke through the buried chains. Final alarm awaits true watch command. All eyes turned to her. Ysra's face went pale. Carden Voss stepped back for the first time. Marenna understood the law before anyone named it. The final alarm would call every Thornvale wolf to the north. It would expose the moonless routes, lock the warning roads, and break Durnmar's claim before it could become shield right. But if she rang it under the same broken law, every watchwoman after her would remain disposable. Old women wrung dry. Border wives doubted. Widows useful. Until mocked, Marenna lifted her bloody hand from the floor. "No," she said. Alaric stared at her. "Marenna." She looked at him across smoke, blue fire, and kneeling enemies rising again. "I will not ring the final alarm for a kingdom that can exile its watchers when truth becomes inconvenient." The hall went silent around her words. This time, not with disbelief, with understanding. Marenna stood straighter, bleeding and gray-haired beneath the burning banners. "Restore watchwomen's law," she said, "or let the feast hear what silence costs." The Durnmar envoy moved first, not with a sword, with a smile. Carden Voss stepped back from the blue watchline and spread his hands, as if Marenna Vale's demand had embarrassed the kingdom more than the raiders in its feast hall. Behind him, moonless blades lifted again. Around him, nobles clutched overturned tables, servants held children behind benches, and Thornvale wolves trembled between scentless enemies and buried warning fire. "A charming speech," Carden said. "But no kingdom rewrites border law with blades at its throat." Marenna's bleeding hand tightened around her staff. "No," she said. "It remembers why the law was written." Ysra Dain saw the opening and struck at it. "Majesty, if you yield command to watchwomen now, you prove Durnmar right. Thornvale cannot govern its own border without old widows and hidden chains." Alaric Thornvale stood amid blue fire, with blood darkening his sleeve, and his wolf shadow torn beside him. His eyes moved once across the hall. The frightened nobles, the silent children, the servants holding the exits, the watchwomen waiting for a law that had used them without protecting them. Then he looked at Marenna, not asking her to save him, not yet, asking what truth required before rescue. She gave him no softness. "Say it whole." Ysra's face tightened. Alaric understood. He raised his sword, but not toward Durnmar, not toward the Moonless, not toward Marenna. He turned the blade point down and drove it into the stone floor across the blue watchline. The old hall chains rang beneath it. "By Thornvale crown and wolf blood," he said, voice carrying through smoke and fear. "The moon watchwomen are restored to border command during moon raids, scentless breaches, and warning law." The buried chains brightened. Ysra stepped back. Alaric continued. "No captain may silence a moon warning bell. No feast, treaty, marriage, campaign, or council order may overrule a true watch call. The cracked ledger on the floor shuddered. Marenna's breath caught, but she did not lower her staff. One more. Alaric looked at her and knew. He closed his hand around the sword hilt until blood from his palm darkened the silver guard. Marenna Vale was exiled under a false alarm charge prepared by Captain Ysra Dain. Her warnings were true. Her watch was lawful. Her name is restored to North Fang Command. The victory hall shook. Not from battle. From bells answering beneath stone. Ysra's last control broke. She lunged toward Marenna with the dagger she had hidden against her sleeve, face white with rage. The younger watchwoman moved before Alaric did. So did the older one. Their staffs crossed in front of Marenna, catching Ysra's wrist between them. The dagger fell and struck the blue watch line. It burned black. Marenna did not look at Ysra. She stepped past her. That was punishment enough for a woman who had built power by being obeyed. The final alarm waited in the floor like a held breath. Marenna knelt, pressed her bleeding palm against the blue crescent she had made, and spoke not to the king, not to the court, but to every watcher who had ever stood cold while others slept warm. North Fang hears. Thornvale wakes. The silent road is broken. She struck her staff once. The final alarm rang. No single bell could have made that sound. It came from the cracked great bell above the tower, the severed road posts, the buried hall chains, the old ravine mark, the widow stair stones, and the blood in Marenna's palm. It rolled outward through Thornvale lands like moonlight given a voice. Every moonless raider became visible at once. Ravine salt burned blue on their boots, wrists, throat ties, and blade handles. Their hidden paths flared across the floor. Their silent orders appeared as black threads running not to Marenna, not to the bells, but to Carden Voss, and the Durnmar seal beneath his spotless cloak. Alaric's wolf shadow rose. The wound in its shoulder closed under the final alarm. Not healed by mercy, strengthened by truth. "Thornvale," Alaric commanded, "hold the watch lines." This time, the soldiers did not charge blindly. They moved where Marenna had taught them to move. Guards drove raiders across blue chains. Servants pulled children through safe arches. Wolves struck only when salt straps burned. Watchwomen called turns before the Moonless reached them. A kitchen boy cut a wrist tie with a carving knife and lived because an older watchwoman pulled him back before the raider fell. Marenna stood at the center of the hall and directed the living through the old law. Left chain, low hook, east arch clear. Do not cross the red reflection. Strike the salt, not the shadow. Every command saved breath. Carden Voss tried to retreat through the royal dais passage. Alaric reached him first. The envoy froze with one hand beneath his cloak. "Draw it," Alaric said. Carden smiled thinly. "Touch me. And Durnmar calls it war." Marenna's voice cut across the hall. "He has the shield. Right seal under his left rib." Carden's smile died. Alaric tore the cloak open. An iron seal fell against the envoy's chest, already glowing blue from the final alarm. Across its face, warning fire wrote the truth. Durnmar accepted breach before oath. The nobles saw. The wolves saw. Most importantly, the surviving soldiers saw. Durnmar's clean grief became open conspiracy. Alaric struck the envoy with the flat of his sword hard enough to send him to the floor. "Bind him," Carden gasped. "You will need our iron before winter ends." Marenna looked toward the burning banners, the watchwomen, the servants, the wolves finally scenting their enemies again. "Then bring iron without lies." The last Moonless leader charged from behind the royal table, blade raised toward Alaric's torn shadow. Marenna saw the angle first. She threw her staff. It struck the raider's knee strap. The salt tie snapped. Alaric's wolf shadow hit him before he reached the king. This time, the shadow did not tear. The raider fell with sound. The final alarm faded slowly, leaving blue lines burning low under the floor. Ysra stood bound between the two watchwomen, her frozen ledger open at her feet. the pages no longer hid. Every erased alarm, every cut rope, every unguarded path, every Durnmar promise lay visible in blue-white ink. Alaric faced her. "You are stripped of captaincy," he said. "You will stand trial under watch law and crown law." Ysra's laugh was broken, but bitter. "You hand your border to widows." Marenna stepped close enough for Ysra to see the blood drying on her palm. "No," she said. "He returns the border to the women who kept it alive when captains wanted quiet." Ysra had no answer. When guards took her away, the hall did not cheer. Some truths were too costly for cheering. The cracked moon warning bell rang once from the tower. Soft now, almost tired. Marenna turned toward the sound, and for the first time that night, her knees nearly failed. Alaric reached her before she fell. He stopped short of touching her. She noticed. So did he. His hand remained open between them, offered but not claimed. "Marenna," he said, voice rough. She looked at the hand, then at his face. The victory chain at his throat was broken. His armor was stained with salt, blood, and blue warning fire. His wolf shadow stood behind him with its head lowered toward her, not as a beast recognizing power, but as one exhausted watcher to another. "You listened tonight because the bells forced you," she said. Pain moved through his eyes. "Yes, learn to listen before they crack. I will. Do not promise me as king." His jaw tightened. Then he lowered his head. "I will learn as the man whose life you watched over when he forgot to watch yours." The words reached places in her. She had no wish to open in front of a hall full of witnesses, so she did not answer them. Not yet. Instead, she turned to the watchwomen. The younger one still held Ysra's Fallon dagger wrapped in cloth. The older one had blood on her sleeve and pride in her eyes. "Ring the dawn, Count," Marenna said. The younger watchwoman blinked. "Me? You stood the line?" The girl walked to the nearest buried chain and pulled. A clear bell note rose through the broken feast hall. Not alarm. "Count." Across Thornvale lands, other watchposts answered one by one, no longer frantic, no longer silenced. The sound carried over the ravine, the lower road, the widow's stair, and the watchtower where Marenna's husband had once rung until his hands split. Marenna closed her eyes. For the first time in 30 years, the bell did not sound like loss. It sounded like law returning. Alaric stood beside her, not touching, not claiming, not asking too soon. "What will you do now?" he asked. Marenna opened her eyes to the blue dawn, beginning beyond the broken windows. "I will rebuild the watch. And after?" She looked at him then. The old wound between them remained. So did the memory of his breath under her hand, his wolf beside her vigil, his command arriving late, but not empty. Romance was not a bell to be rung on demand. Trust was not restored by one night of obedience. "After," she said, "you may come to the tower and stay awake." Alaric bowed his head. Not to the court, to her. Behind them, the moon-warning bells of Thornvale rang the dawn count through snow and smoke, and every soldier, noble, wolf, and servant heard the truth the kingdom had tried to exile. The watcher was not false. The warning had always been true.